All right. Well, here we are. We're ready for an awesome panel discussion. Thank you, everybody, for showing up, and especially our esteemed panelists here, which we'll get to in a second. My name is John Finkelstein, and I'm the Executive Creative Director for PwC in Canada. And you might be wondering why a creative guy is talking about artificial intelligence in the built environment. Well, part of it is I have an interest in technology and construction, all this kind of stuff. But I think, like many people, I kind of don't know everything that there is to know about it. And so I get to ask really interesting and hopefully stupid questions that you might have been thinking about yourself. So I'm going to introduce our panelists now. And rather than me trying to tell you who they are, we thought it better for them to tell you about themselves. That way I don't mess up the pronunciation of their names. So Zara, let's start with you, please.
Yeah, sure. My name is Zara Riahi. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Contilio, and we are a 3D AI analytics platform, turning site data into actionable intelligence on construction progress, quality, and also build digital twins. Thank you. Looking forward to this panel.
Ardalan?
Hi, Ardalan Kasparpour. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Onsite IQ. Onsite IQ is a visual data capture platform for owners and developers. And our goal is to bring transparency and accountability to the construction process with augmented with an AI engine that can streamline the process and make it easier for stakeholders to extract information from that visual data.
Cool, thank you. Yankee.
Hi, my name is Yankee. I'm the president and co-founder of openhouse.ai. And for home builders, we attach an AI engine onto an existing home builder's website, giving the home buyer a dynamic and Netflix-like experience. And while they're having that great experience, we're helping the home builder collect real-time market research data for them to make multi-million-dollar decisions.
Awesome. And then finally, best for last, right, Chris? Over to you.
Thanks, John. So yeah, I'm Chris. I'm a co-founder of a company called Hades. We are based in Zurich, and we help cities better manage and maintain their sewer infrastructure, so their wastewater pipelines. And we do that by automatically detecting defects in sewer inspection videos and helping cities make decisions on when and how to repair the pipes. Happy to be here today.
Thank you. So as you guys can see in the virtual audience, there's quite a cross section of things going on here, of experts here, from wastewater and pipes and kind of the underground side of things, which is amazing. And I'm looking forward to hearing more about Hades, right through to the construction of this stuff. So we're going to cover all things today. But before we do that, I'm curious. Like I said at the beginning, I'm kind of like the unwashed masses in a way. And like a lot of people in the audience too, probably, there's varying degrees of what the heck does artificial intelligence actually mean? And I know, just because I like movies, that Hollywood is very happy that the sort of the dark side, if you will, of artificial intelligence and machine learning and predictive analytics and all this stuff, there's a lot of mustache twirling as writers come up with the scripts to figure out how AI will take over humanity, which, probably not going to happen, although it is 2020. So I'm curious, maybe we could just take a couple of seconds to talk about really how you define AI, and in particular, if you could give it a slant to the built environment, that would be great. Let's start with Ardalan.
Thanks, John. So in very simple layman terms, when you talk about artificial intelligence, think of it, this is the analogy I typically use, think of it as a baby that's just born. The brain is wiped, nothing's inside. As you keep showing the baby repeat over and over specific items, examples, let's say you keep repeating mama, right? You repeat it so many times to the point that the baby learns and starts saying mama, right? The exact analogy applies to every single industry, every single vertical, and everything that you want to train to understand with an artificial intelligence platform. So let's say autonomous driving is a very good example. If you show an AI engine how to drive, right? What is a car? What does a pedestrian look like? How does a bicycle look like? show it as many examples that you can. After a while, the AI engine will understand and recognize that object. So now, after that step, what you would want to do with that information is up to you. But that's a very easy way to simplify this information. And it brings you back to the point where, okay, how do you show them those examples? Where is your data source? Because you show me the wrong information, I will detect the wrong information for you. Show me clean information, the accuracy goes up. I'll be able to do the work for you. So that's in short how I would describe an AI engine.
Awesome. Yeah, it's interesting how I think a lot of people, at least in some of the more creative circles that I participate in, think about, AI as being almost like an organic thing. And I think a lot of people don't really realize it's just kind of like an offshoot of computer science in a way. And that it's a bit of a garbage in, garbage out. Whatever you program, whatever you do with the AI, at the start really predicts or determines how useful it's going to be. Okay, Chris, what do you think? AI, how would you define it down below the sewers there?
So yeah, also generally I would like to say what Alan said in the beginning. It's basically teaching a machine to do tasks which were used to be done by humans. And if we now particularly look at the underground, like we have thousands of miles of sewers all over the world. And since they're, underground infrastructures, they usually can't be visited directly. So in most cases, they would add like a small robot into the pipe, and the pipe then would make a video of it. And afterwards, like an environmental engineer like me would sit there, watch hours, really hours of sewer inspection videos, writing down the facts. And as you can imagine, it's very monotonous, and it's also highly error prone. And like using an AI for this task not only allows to speed it up, but also to create objective, reproducible data, which is really like the basis if you want to go into data-driven asset management, into predictive maintenance. And so we are very keen in order to take away, let's say, this boring and repetitive task, and in order to give extra time to the engineers to make good decision with a better data foundation.
I love that. I'm going to direct this question to you, Yankee, but I'm going to move off of definitions now, unless Zara or yourself have something extra to add to that, because I'm really kind of interested. We hear a lot. I work at PwC, as I mentioned, and we talk a lot about how artificial intelligence and really automation can really have a massive impact on what people do with the saved time. Okay, I'm going to put that in quotes for the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because we're not spending time on sort of manual, meaningless tasks, as Chris talked about. What kind of applications do you see now moving forward for AI and kind of the immediate future in real estate? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, so at least for us, we're in the home building industry, and to me, AI is just really a fancy way of using data to predict what will happen, or if you want something to happen in the future, what should you do now to make that future happen? And so for us, save time revolves around our product, saving the home buyer time. So when you save a home buyer time to look for their home, that sales cycle becomes shorter for the home builder. They're more nurtured along the way, and they convert faster as well. And so how do we do that? So our AI learns about home buyers, and as they're searching, we're looking at their behavioral signals that they're giving us online. And we're presenting at every click what resonates with that home buyer. It could be a new home, first-time home buyer, or versus an empty nester. Different products will resonate with different people. And so sometimes these home builders have like 65, 100 different floor plans. Well, especially if you're on your phone, what if it's the 99th floor plan that resonates with you? Will you take the time to scroll there? No, right. Like people's attention spans are so short. So what the AI does is adjust on the fly to the home buyer, present what resonates with them. Then the home builder is able to capture them, take them out of the buying pool and bring them down their sales funnel. So that's what we do, and saving time that way.
Well, Not all you
Right,
do.
I'm just gonna jump in. So you, Yankee, mentioned the
Yep.
customer experience, which is a very key area. I'm gonna
Mhm.
actually come back to like from investment side. I guess if you have the data, you can make decisions a lot faster in terms of what you want to invest in, and if
Yep.
that's worth your money. So you're gonna lower your risk. When you come to the design, there is gazillion things that you can do to optimize your design at a concept level. We all know, like at least when I was an engineer, you had to sit down, put like 5 designs side by side and see which one makes sense. But
Yeah.
right now you can run it through an AI and it's going to tell you which one is the best from lighting perspective, from a square meter perspective, all of that. When you come to the construction, there is so much we need to do to automate the process. And so like progress is one, quality is one, risk management is one, getting them into real time from like 4 to 8 weeks and then into predictive so that we can manage them. And then you come to asset management, linking that to all the things that Yankee mentioned and to a lot more data so that we can manage a lot more optimally all the assets. And imagine you had that for all of the assets that you were managing, if there were homes or there were commercial assets, and you could like rank your assets and see which ones are, or benchmark your assets and see which ones are doing better compared to the next one. So these are some of the applications that come to my mind.
Well, it's interesting because, you know, Yankee, you're talking about kind of residential home building and some of the
Yes.
applications where, you know, artificial intelligence or machine learning can really help facilitate kind of like the buying cycle. I'm
Mhm.
interested, maybe we can talk a bit more about on the construction side of things. And I don't know who best among you to answer this, but when you think about artificial intelligence and a lot of the things that we're talking about today, construction, I mean, even in some of the Drastic talks that I've had the good fortune of doing, talking about the complexities in the construction side of the business, it's like, it made my head go,
Yeah.
basically explode, because, you know, some organizations don't even know how much concrete they're using. It's just like, blows my mind. So is this, Zara, is this you? Adeline, is this you?
Sorry, you go first.
Both of us can talk to it. Go, Adelan, please.
So when it comes to construction, you got two major issues. One is the complexity and dynamic nature of construction. No two buildings are the same, from the architecture to purpose to the process for which you're building it. They're different. So compare that to auto manufacturing, where you have a manufacturing line and the same autos coming out one after another. That's the main major difference, and that makes it difficult. Number two is, up to this point, there was not enough data around it. There was no standardization. I was on a panel today in the morning, and the conversation were around, how do you standardize the data? Where do you collect them? How do you sort them? How do you clean them up? And training an AI, it's always a chicken and egg problem. You don't have the data, you can't tag and train anything. So first you have to build the data set. And I think that construction industry just got to a point where now stakeholders are seeing the value of collecting data in a very well structured manner, right? From visual data, hey, let's have them timestamp, map to the floor plan. Let's build a 3D model behind it, to metadata, right? What is, how many RFIs, how many change orders, how many tasks been delayed so far, and that's the starting point. So that's all great. Now, it gives us an opportunity to build an engine that understands simple concepts to begin with, and then it gets more and more complicated as you move forward. And a very simple example could be, hey, you can build a Roomba, it can navigate through your house, but we don't have a level 5 autonomous driving or car yet, right? Because it's just more complicated to navigate through that process. And then on top of that, there's a human component into this, that stakeholders who are involved in the process. And let's talk about schedule, design, BIM models. How consistent are those across projects? Do you have a BIM model level 3 on every single project? What is the granularity of your schedule when your scheduler is putting it together? And if that's not standard, how do you cope with that? So in general, that's the complexity which makes it harder than other verticals to automate. But I think we're on the right track. We'll get there. It's just a matter of construction doesn't move as fast as other industries, but we're on the right track.
I wanted to add something to it. It's a very complex construction, but at the same time, if you break down the projects, they all have schedules, they all have BIM models, and we are all building the elements. They all have walls, they all have columns, they all have the same components. And I want to say that we don't need to get everything perfectly. But it's true actually doing a little bit of like everything, that we get better and better and we can do more. So like I've seen healthcare and finance beyond construction, and it was not like they had all the perfect data and they put it like into the AI models, and from the other end all the great values came out. It was the same for them. Their data was sitting in silos. They couldn't even touch them. Everything they wanted to touch, they had to touch like 10 million other things. So I think as an industry, we have the benefit of like looking at other verticals and learn from them. And the technologies that we require for construction, which are computer vision, because we are dealing with a physical asset and we need to be like kind of turning it into a digital form, or sensors. And NLP are advanced enough so that if construction companies from commercial perspective or real estate companies are ready, we can bring them to a really good level. And as Erdogan mentioned, start easy and then get to the more sophisticated levels.
Chris, you're down at the bottom of my screen here. Are you sitting on a yoga ball? I'm just curious, because you have very good posture. I should look into that. But I have a question that's maybe a follow-on to what we're talking about here in terms of the construction process and mitigating risk and stuff like that. I'm really big into agile as well, and I'm curious, as someone who really focuses on like really important stuff, right? Like when you get errors or damage down in the systems that you're dealing with, that spells all kinds of trouble. What do you think the appetite for risk is in all of this? I mean, we think about, artificial intelligence and machine learning and natural language processing and all this kind of good stuff. Are we really, as an industry, prepared to take risks to try this stuff out? I'm just curious, what are you seeing?
So maybe let's start with, like risk taking in terms of sewer network operation is very low. Like one of the biggest angst of, like, let's say a sewer network operator is that at some point a sewer would collapse, you would get a sinkhole and like wastewater would spill. So right now, at least in Europe, the situation is that 20% of sewer pipelines are actually replaced too early. So they're still well functioning, but because they're afraid of taking the risk of waiting too long, they're replacing them too early, and thereby they're wasting really billions of public tax money every year, right? And so when we then started in the beginning, obviously, like our, like, let's say potential customer prospects, where they wanted to get to know how well does this AI really function, like, and is it secure? Can we take the risk to let a machine do the job? And so we started with really comparing what can an AI do compared to a human, like what is a precision recall in those cases? Can we make sure that we don't miss important defects? And especially, like if we don't miss, let's say, a break or collapse, right? And so in the beginning, we really needed to educate the customers and gain trust. And we often, compared, like, let's say, what did the human do there? What did the AI do? And right now we are still running our process in a comparison where we usually let an AI do the detection first. And we know how confident our AI is for a particular pipe. And then we often have a human in the loop where we have a trained sewer inspector, an engineer looking at it again and confirming what the AI does. And most likely we'll be doing that for next time. Obviously, the amount of human influence will get less and less because our AI will get more secure, more confident. But nevertheless, we don't want our sewer network operators to take the risk that an important fact is missed. But lastly, saying right now, like, let's say, what does a human do? On average, 25% on defects are missed if a human operator looks at it, or misclassified. So every fourth defect, and that's a study.
Give me
Yeah.
that number again. What percent?
25% of the facts are either missed or misclassified by human, because, like, just imagine you're sitting 8 hours a day in front of a screen and you're looking at dark pipes, and sometimes it's quite difficult, like often I see the facts I haven't seen, and I'm a certified sewer inspector and sewer rehabilitation consultant myself, and I'm still wonder, like, every week, what the hell is that, like, and then usually I ask 5 sewer inspector friends I have and say, like, hey, can you tell me what it is? And sometimes they have the same opinion. Very often they have different opinion about that effect, because you will not imagine what you can find actually in a sewer pipeline.
Oh, I'm pretty sure there's dwellers down there. No. Civilization. Maybe I watch too much science fiction. Curious. So I want to go back to risk for a second, because I think risk appetite, even though I'm not a consultant really exactly, I think factors on everybody's mind. So, and in construction is such scale. That's the part. It's like, what are you guys hearing from other organizations who are considering getting into and really kind of scaling up AI on the construction and the real estate side? Are people freaking out? Are they really hesitant to try it, or do they see the business case and the reliability? And Adelan, as you were saying, that if the data is good, and we won't get into bias probably today. I'm just curious, like, is there resistance, or is there a lot more adoption happening?
Yeah, I can speak to that. Depends on which stakeholder you're talking to. I think the bottom line is, if you're creating value, if you're making people more productive, you're augmenting them, you're making their life better and easier, then there's a case to be made there, right? The typical difficulty that you run into in an antiquated industry like construction, or we work with insurance carriers as well, people have been doing the same thing for too long, and they're afraid of new processes. They're afraid they're going to lose their jobs. Very simple. That's the first reaction you see. We experienced this firsthand with insurance companies, and you have to do a lot of work on the. Please go ahead.
This is the robots are taking my job. That's what you're saying. They're worried about losing.
This is yeah. If the AI can tell you what's going on, what do you need me anymore? And the reality is, it will take a very long time for the AI to replace what human could do, because it doesn't have that intuition, that touch, personal communication. And in fact, how they should be thinking is, let's say I am a PM, or I'm a risk engineer, or I'm managing 1 or 2 projects. What with the AI, I could do 10 instead, right? And it takes a little bit of education to get them there. Specifically, when you look at the people who are running the show, they've been around for 20, 30 years now, and it's difficult for them to imagine a different world where they get help from a computer, but it's resolvable. It's just a lot. You have to work a lot on the messaging, education, rollout, implementation to get them comfortable with the process.
Right.
Yes, similar experience here on our end. So our customers are home builders, and sometimes they're like family owned, maybe second, third generation. They used to be, nail and hammer guys. They built homes themselves. So when you try to tell them about technology, usually, they're not innovators or adopters typically. But actually, and in our sales calls, they would say, I've been doing the same thing for 20 years. Why should I change? But after COVID happened, we no longer get that answer anymore. And people are thinking, wow, my online presence becomes that much more important now. How do I stand out or make that experience better so that I continue to drive sales and survive this kind of pandemic period? So people are looking for ways to adapt. At least in my market, that's what's happening.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot of that across all different types of industries, in terms of we're experiencing it right now. This really big gap between sort of the face-to-face. Now we're in a virtual world, and what kind of tools and technologies can people sort of start to plug in to kind of make up for lost ground? Zara, what are you seeing in that space? Are you seeing resistance to adoption based on old habits, or are you seeing people saying, this makes things so much better, so much easier. I love it. Like,
I think at the very beginning, they are resisting, but when they try it and they see the value, they warm up to it, and it becomes a lot easier to implement at a scale. So I actually think trying a technology is a really good way to get around that risk factor, or if you're thinking, oh my God, I'm not sure if this is going to work for me, I don't want to deploy it at like $1 billion site to see how it works. Try it for a few months and then bring it to that $1 billion site, if that's your concern. The other thing that I wanted to mention, in real estate and construction, we as people are used to transferring the risks to other parties. And when it comes to technology, that doesn't necessarily work. So for whomever who is listening to this right now or after, think about that when adopting technologies.
So sorry, I have to ask you a question. Is this is less now, you can't point the finger at somebody else? Is that what you mean? Like,
yeah,
it's really interesting. So you're a little bit more exposed in a way,
yeah.
which is kind of interesting. You have to be a lot more.
So we get the question actually a lot that do you ensure actually that the data you're giving us is like correct? And we're like, it's analytics. So you try it and you see it works, and it's been deployed for a lot of other sites. So it's just actually working. And right now we have like X% accuracy, but we get asked those questions because the way we're used to work is like contracts, and contracts usually transfer the risks to somebody else.
Right. I just want to say, so we have about 15 minutes left, looks like. And I know there are a way for you folks in the audience at home, wherever you are, to ask some questions. I don't know if any have come in, but what I will do is, if you do have a question, a follow-up question, or you want to ask one of the panelists something specific, Alan, you mentioned knowing how they could do that. And it's not in the chat window here.
Yeah, I'm looking at I'm monitoring the panel right now. No, Lauren's been the last person who interacted with. So no questions so far.
Great. I just want to
lag between our live conversation and.
Perfect. Yeah. Just want to make sure that if anybody had a burning question, you felt that you had
I have a question for the panel, actually. Yeah. So when we started our venture, we had to go through, generating a data set that was never collected before. And so a lot of questions around that, is it of value? In the end, it has to have business value. And we're at a point where we can absolutely validate we're converting leads faster, more people are coming in, shorter sales cycle, higher sales, right? But have you guys in your respective areas had to generate a data set that wasn't there before to do what you do? Or is it just a matter of, the data is in several places and it just needs to be cleaned and combined? So I'll leave that to the panel.
I can speak to ours. When we started, construction is a very, very siloed and private industry. So if you are a subcontractor, a contractor, an owner, owner is a little bit different. You might be capturing information, but you keep it very close to the chest. You don't share it with everyone. And as Zara mentioned, because of the way the contracts are designed and risk transfer, the liability is to the roof. I'll give you a very simple example, right? Let's say you documented your entire job site. God forbid something happens, somebody fell off, right? That entire information will be subpoenaed. So even if that data is being collected, which exists out there, it's not openly and freely shared between different stakeholders, let alone the industry. So to build an AI engine that understands construction, we had to build a data set. And then in the past 2 years, we've collected over 200 million images. And now we're in a position where, okay, now we have the data set to do what we wanted to do. And it prolonged the journey compared to what we were expecting, but that's what we had to do. It just doesn't exist. It didn't exist, and now today it does.
Yeah, the same experience goes for us. Like the LiDAR scans that we needed didn't definitely exist in the industry. And so what we did though was forming partnerships with 20 plus firms in the industry in the first 6 months of the business. And so we got to put a really sizable data set together. And then we trained our pipeline to actually generate more data from that. And as we were developing, of course, we onboarded customers and added more data to that. So that was the way that we got around the data problem. And surprisingly, a lot of the construction companies, real estate companies, surveying companies, engineering companies gave us the data. We signed NDAs and they gave us the data, which was really good to see.
Chris?
Yeah, like for us, we started at ETH Zurich, like in a research project. So it was good for us to get the initial data, and we tried, the nice thing is like videos are made anyways, and they are actually pre-annotated by those inspectors. But as I already mentioned, like 25% of the defects are missed, and it's highly subjective. There's one guy who's super precise and he annotates every single small defects. And then the other guys who only annotate, let's say, the most severe defects. And that's why it was very inconsistent data. So like the first year, like I spent every day a couple of hours annotating this data and training our AI. But for me, it was actually a very good experience because, like beforehand, like being an environmental engineer at university, I had seen some sewers, but not that many. And now through the process of the 2 years, I've seen so many pipes, like I know how well our AI performs on which type of data. And also, like I got very confident, and with the confidence seeing that our AI got better with course of times, it was also easier to convey this confidence to our customers that we can really predict those defects and that I know about those defects. So actually it was a good process for us, like, and we learned a lot during this process.
Amazing. I'm curious, we're talking about, adoption and data and all that kind of good stuff. Is there a particular area in sort of the real estate industry sector, if you will, that's kind of doing this really well, like leading the charge? And we're talking about, different parts of infrastructure, construction, retail, or residential rather. Are you guys seeing anything? Who's knocking you out as sort of a beacon in basically leveraging, data, AI, and potentially machine learning into something that's really powerful?
You see a lot of upside actually after COVID from the asset owner and the developer side. There is like huge interest in the technology from their side right now.
Is that because of COVID, or it's really accelerated? Yeah.
You'll see a lot, I think, in the leasing space and prop tech as opposed to construction tech when it comes to online buying, leasing, renting, so on and so forth. They started earlier. They had more openly or freely shared information and data, and it's a B2C play. So got a lot of traction there. And I think that's the direction to go.
Also, like mortgage side, of course, because it's related to fintech, it's like miles ahead, I think, compared to the construction or other things that are, let's say, the back end of real estate.
Well, it's interesting how a lot of these different technologies, both front and back end, are going to start to basically converge, it feels like, because you mentioned fintech and mortgage and building and prediction and who's going to buy what and where best to put it and what kind of technology you want to use in it. Everything is kind of coming together. So just going back to the COVID thing for a second, do you guys feel, yes, it's been an accelerant, but what new opportunities, if any, has this particular moment in time, the pandemic, the unprecedented times, what has that done? Have you seen any new, oh man, I never even thought of that, or that's come out of nowhere?
Yes. For us, like asset owners need to make sure that their buildings are compliant because of COVID. And so the creation of like digital twins from the asset owner or the operator's perspective has gone up like quite a lot.
Yeah, for us, from COVID, just more of the home buying journey has been online now. Because that's always been a trend. People look online first to kind of do the preliminary research when they buy a home, but now more of that journey is online now, to the point where there's a segment of customers that will buy a home online without walking into it, or visiting a show home. That will work for some people, but there will always be people that want to touch and feel it, right? And it may just take one visit to do that. So I think COVID has accelerated the need for that online buying presence to be a good experience overall.
And I
For
think,
us-
John, go ahead, please, Chris.
Yeah, for us, it was even a bit simpler. Like, let's say 1 year ago, for me, it was very difficult to book an online meeting with some guy working at a city. Like, it was almost impossible to present a digital software digitally. So I spent most of my time traveling from city to present it physically. And like all of a sudden, COVID allowed now that we can have video meetings with cities, and they are very keen on having their data online available because many of them face difficulties to access their data. Like I know cities in Germany which during the lockdown couldn't get to their data that well, and they wouldn't even know like what is happening there. And suddenly, like, yeah, so it changed like the perception about it. That is actually something good to do it digitally, and not everything needs to be physically.
Yeah, and I guess on our side, when the pandemic happened, people scrambled to get access to their projects, and there's a lot of financial risk with the shutdowns and delays. So we saw a surge in demand and just basically account expansions coming from existing clients, which is interesting. But one area which I believe will significantly improve, I'm specifically talking about construction, is contact tracing and keeping track of who is on your job site. So all these entrance systems, check-in systems, contact tracing in the construction will, they already existed. Some more sophisticated clients or stakeholders would have implemented it. It's relative to the size of the site. Right now, they'll take it more seriously. And I think that's the case in existing buildings also. At every lobby you see, you got to register, you get the temperature test before walking into the building. And I think that will stay with the industry.
Oh yeah. And all the HVAC stuff that has to happen. I mean, it's mind-boggling where all this stuff needs to go. We've got about 5 more minutes together, and I'm just, well, there's 2 questions that I have that I really want to kind of get into with a little bit of time that we have left. And that is this notion of things that you've seen in your industries that make you go, oh man, I wish that I invented that. I wish that I had thought of that. You know, in rock and roll, it's like, I wish I wrote that song. So I'm just curious if you've seen anything out there that go, oh, I wish I had done that. Let's start with you, Chris. If you have anything.
So let's say, like, I guess there are many interesting methods on how to repair and replace a pipe, like all those, no-dig methods, let's say putting a liner into a pipe. I think that's just amazing that you're able to, like extend the lifetime of a sewer by like 30 to 50 years without digging a hole and doing it in a very cost-efficient way. So I think that's like from a physical construction, very amazing. And I think like if I would have invented that and also patented a couple of years ago, that would be cool, So I like this approach.
Yeah. What about you, Yankee?
For me, being exposed to interactive floor plans is very interesting. Again, this whole notion of the home buying journey and being able to almost buy your home online. You can choose a floor plan, you can make modifications to it, save it under your profile, you can it'll cost it right away, and you can pretty much sign a contract to put your deposit down. So it's like create your own home almost, right? And so I just think that's really cool. Like I would enjoy, whether it's like 11 p.m. at night, playing with my future house rather than talking to a salesperson, especially if it's very early in my buying process. So that to me is pretty cool, and well, that's the kind of technology we also integrate with.
The actual sort of the intelligence behind what you're talking about, I think, is really interesting because it starts to make like the buying, searching fatigue thing. It sort of starts to mitigate that a little bit, as you're saying, like you're going to go to the 99th page of a list of a search result kind of thing. Super interesting. Zara, what do you wish that you had, what you've seen out there that you go, oh, I wish that I had played a role in that or invented it or thought of it?
I like offsite manufacturing quite a lot when it comes to the construction and real estate industry, and I think it's pretty nascent right now, but that's an area where I'm hoping to play a role because it brings transportation, logistics, a lot of technology together with constructing in a completely different manner based on platforms and what we're doing in like manufacturing together. So that's an area that I really like, and I want to play a role in.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
On my side, I don't think it already exists in the construction, but I would love to see a company streamline the payment process in construction.
Okay.
You see this across the board. The default rates are very low in construction, yet it's one of the worst industries when it comes to cash flow management. It's everyone's trying to pay the other party late. And it starts at the lender to the owner, contractor, subcontractor, and typically subcontractor flush down there. But streamlining that payment process would be a very interesting play in the construction industry.
Awesome. So that's kind of very eye-opening or mind-altering for me. I think we have time for maybe one question left. And I mean, for me, it's like, even when we do the Drastic talks, or, you know, I do a podcast for PwC, I think it's really interesting. You guys are so ensconced or ingrained in the spaces that you're in, you know, and a lot of people might think that the real estate sector is kind of slow to adopt new things, and maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But irrespective of that, what recommendations might you have for builders or developers who are kind of exploring and thinking about getting more into the AI space, into the built environment? What recommendations, what would you say to them if they're kind of sitting on the fence a little bit? Let's start with Zara.
If you want to learn how to swim, get in the water. There is no other way around it. You cannot just watch the companies from afar and want to be the best company in this space. You need to try the technologies, and the technologies, like the companies, we are not companies that have been in operations for the past 10 years or something. We are new companies, so you need to tailor somewhat your risk appetite and work with the company so that after 6 months to a year, you get to those big ROIs that everybody is promising you.
Yankee?
I think technology is the great equalizer nowadays. It used to be a big company thing where big companies can buy data centers and they can have a lot of data and buy a lot of research and find more data. But nowadays technology is cheaper and more accessible. And so it equals the playing field between let's say a smaller home builder and a really large home builder. It's no longer like they have technology that you can't get access to. So if you're looking for a competitive edge, you can get that now. And technology's gotten to a point where it's cheaper and more accessible. So just keep an open mind and know that you can do that. That is an option.
Great. Chris, what advice do you have? What recommendations do you have?
So I also would say, like often it also makes maybe sense instead of trying to do everything yourself. Like there are many technologies out there. It's maybe better to work with a partner, or to find somebody who has already implemented it, because it takes a lot of time, a lot of energy and investment to get something running in the space. And that said, like I strongly believe, like that, like for instance, we would focus on sewers and we would not go into tunnels, or we would not do AI for streets right now. We would focus on the industry we know we can do well, and we rather look for a partner who can bring an AI for streets and then work with them together in order to maintain this infrastructure together. And so that said, like I think it's great to try out things, but also to carefully evaluate what you can do best yourself and for which parts you should rather find a partner to help you do that.
So yeah, don't try and do everything yourself. That does make sense. And I think the last word's going to come from you,
Marla.
Yeah.
So I will flip the question. Look, people who are running construction and real estate, they're very financially savvy. If you can make a case and show them the value, if you're selling the value prop, not the technology, yes, they'll take a shot at you. If you're giving me a solution that is 10x better, half the price, I'll take it in a heartbeat. Because look, as a commercial real estate developer, what do? You're just building a financial plan, build a project, make money, right? So make that case for me and I'll give you a shot, as opposed to if you're trying to sell AI or technology and use all these jargons instead of the real value. I'll give you a funny story. The biggest issue in the construction industry is water intrusion. And I
Okay.
haven't seen a good solution in it, right, like in the industry yet. Build that, all the owners will buy it in a heartbeat. Show me a way to not get a $25 million claim after the project's over. I'll take that solution in a heartbeat. So it's a little bit, how do you translate technology to the value, show the ROI so they take a shot at you? That's how I look at this whole process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I know what I'm going to be doing on the weekend anyway. I'll be looking for a solution to I'm just kidding. I wouldn't even know. This chewing gum, is that anything? So, hey, we've at the end of our 45 minutes together. I want to thank you very, very much for agreeing to be part of Drastic Summit and to have a chat with us about AI in the built environment. Certainly super exciting. Hopefully you could tell, my mind is going a million miles an hour thinking about all the different applications and how interesting the future is going to be once we get through COVID and all that stuff. But thank you very, very much. I guess if there's any follow-on questions, people are free to reach out to you via LinkedIn or email if they have any follow-up questions. Is that all right?
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Great. Okay. Well, with that said, I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the conference. I know I will. And thanks again for joining. And I think we just all hit leave now.